Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are from across the globe. My name is Kathleen, and I'll be your host for today's live Q&A and giveaway with the one and only Ian Fennelly. Woohoo!
Hi Kathleen. Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us. This is very, very exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, we're also very excited. So, we are going to wait for others to chime in and be active in the chat. So, if you guys can hear us and see us okay, please type llama in the chat. For those who are new with Etcher, we are an art learning platform and we work with art teachers from all across the globe to create wonderful classes and courses. So, we have that in our website. That's etcherstudio.com in case you're curious about it. And speaking of classes, the reason why we're doing this live Q&A with Ian is because we are relaunching his urban sketching course entitled The Journey of Looking in Watercolors. So that's his course, one of his courses with us, with Etcher. So we're going to delve into that in a while. But right now we have that at 40% off. So if you're curious to learn more about that, I'm going to drop that link in the chat. So please direct your attention in the chat. We have a lot of hi already. Okay, cool. That's already a lot of people from all across the globe. Thank you so much, everyone. So what are we going to do today? So today we're going to be doing a Q&A with Ian, and it's going to be revolving around the theme, how to get you started with your urban sketching journey, be it encouragement that you need, practical tips. We're going to delve into that depending on the questions that you have. So if you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat and we'll try to cater all of your questions within an hour. And make sure to stick till the end so that you can be eligible to enter our giveaway for an Etcher Lab block, paper block of your choice. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor first to Ian so that he can introduce himself and reintroduce himself for others who have known him and get us started. So Ian.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And hello, everybody. Welcome to our Q&A with Etcher. For those of you that don't know me, I'm an urban sketcher. I work all over the world. I teach all over the world in-person workshops, and I make hundreds and hundreds of online workshop films as well. And I've been associated with Etcher now for over 4 years. I've done lots of recorded videos, which Kathleen mentioned before, The Journey of Looking in Watercolor. And we've also done lots of live workshops and lots of demonstrations. So I've basically been an artist all my life. It's kind of what I do. And I've also been a teacher. I've had a vast kind of teaching experience over the years, mainly working with very, very, very small children. I was a primary school teacher for a long time, but I've always been a professional artist as well. And now I have this wonderful, wonderful job of traveling all over, whether it's Europe, whether it's America, whether it's North Africa, and enabling people to sketch and paint the world in front of them. And it's just such a privilege to do. And it's great working with Etcher as well.
And it has been a wonderful journey to be working with Ian throughout all those years. And like I have been teasing Ian earlier, he has been with Etcher for the longest time, way longer than I have been with Etcher too. So he has seen how Etcher has grown, but it is also lovely to see how Ian has been working with us as well. So yeah. So let's get this started. There are lots of questions already in the chat, but before we get started into the nitty-gritty details of urban sketching or how to get started, first I'm going to ask Ian, why did you fall in love with urban sketching?
That's a great question, Kathleen. So for years and years and years, I've been an artist. Okay, ever since I was a kind of baby artist, I started getting passionately involved in creativity really when I was a teenager, when I was 15, 16 at school. So for a long time, I was kind of exhibiting and selling and doing really, really well with my work, but it was all studio based. Everything was done in a studio. And the only people I really ever dealt with were gallery agents and, commissions and people coming along and buying my work and collectors and that. And there was no kind of social aspect to it. But I always wanted to draw. I always wanted to go outside and draw. And then several years ago, I got involved in the urban sketching community and realized what a wonderfully social group it was. It was a kind of like-minded group of people that just wanted to go outside and just record the world. And and as the movement's grown over the years, it's become bigger and more supportive. And nowadays you can go online and you can learn skills and you can learn techniques, but you can go out and you can meet people in your locality as well. And it's a very social form of art, because you're not just learning skills and techniques and recording the world, you're actually interacting with people, and you're learning about the location, you're learning about geography, you're learning about history. So it just ticks so many boxes, Kathleen, and I just love it, because it's kind of like, it is art, but it's more than art. You know, it's life. It's getting out there in all the kind of different conditions and different experiences that get thrown up at you, and it's wonderful. So my job is to encourage people to go out and do it, but also to teach them the skills, to give them that kind of toolkit so they can get out there and they can draw with perhaps more confidence and more enjoyment, you know. So that's what I do.
Gotcha. That's wonderful, and that's a wonderful answer to that. It's like this multifaceted approach to urban sketching that you fell in love with.
It is, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Love that. And I wanted to highlight that part where you mentioned you are here to help people get started, and give them the toolkits to get you started, or get them rather started. So I guess the next question is, how do we fall in love with urban sketching this time?
How do other people? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a tough one, because I think a lot of people, and there's a few people that have alluded to it in the chat already, about confidence. You know, confidence is a big thing. And I think if you're going to go out on location, I think people often feel that people are going to come up and be critical of your work, you know, the general public, you know. So I think if you're starting out, I think that the first thing is to perhaps go with friends or go with a group. You know, don't go by yourself, you know, go with a group of people. And if you're a complete beginner, just start small, you know, don't go for all the fancy materials. I mean, we use in our courses, you know, we use brush pens, we use watercolor, we use fineliners, we use all sorts of stuff. But if you're just beginning, if you're a real beginner, just use a pencil and a small little notepad, and just get out there and just draw what you can see. And then, you know, you can start going on the courses. Then you can start developing your skills. And when it comes to the skills, I think the first thing that trips a lot of people up is this thing called perspective. You know, so we do a lot of perspective in these courses that we put together. So, you know, you can learn about 1-point perspective. You can learn a little bit about tone and tonal value. You can learn a little bit about color mixing and application of color. You know, you can learn a bit about composition. So all these little things are built in all the courses that we've produced. But I think to begin with, just get started, just go and do it, because it's just a great way of just making your mark on the world, isn't it? And it's so personal, and it doesn't have to be right. You know, no one's judging you against a photograph, because it's a drawing, it's a piece of art, and it's how you see the world. And if the line wobbles or is bent or is crooked, it doesn't matter, because it's your line, you know. And if it doesn't match up with the building in front of you, it's not your fault, it's the building's fault. The building should look more like your picture, you know. So you spin the whole thing round. So just get out and just go and do it, because it's fun, and you don't have to be any good. I mean, I have students all the time who are complete beginners, people that have never drawn before, and they've got no kind of preconceived idea of what they want to produce. They just want to do it. You know, they just want to sit there with a sketchbook and make a few marks on a piece of paper, and they just want to enjoy the moments. And then the big bonus from that is they take away something with them, you know, which they can share with their families. So it's great. It's great fun to do. I love it.
Thank you. We definitely, I feel like it transcends in the screen how your enthusiasm with urban sketching really shows. And I think that addresses one of the questions in the chat from Lewis. She said, or he or she, sorry, says that their biggest struggle is just to get out and sketch. They feel like they have no confidence or the ability to draw and just do it. Do you think it's associated with their skills?
I think it could be. I think one of the other things as well, Kathleen, is a lot of people have perhaps maybe not had great experiences at school, you know, with their teachers. Because, you know, back in the day, sometimes teachers could be really kind of critical, and it only takes like one word, doesn't it? You know, somebody just saying something, and you can kind of lose your confidence. And I have a lot of students on my courses who haven't drawn and painted for a long, long time. And they often say things like, oh, I loved art at school, but I was never any good. And I was told that I wasn't very good. I want to get back into it again, but I kind of don't know what to do. So as I said before, the first thing is you've just got to do it. You've got to get yourself started. You can't kind of beat yourself up and just keep thinking, I can't do it. You've just got to do it. And maybe it won't look any good. Maybe, your first kind of few sketches, all you'll see is mistakes. But that's called learning. That's how you learn. If you look at something and you think, I've got the perspective wrong, well, that's the beginning of learning about perspective, because at least you've identified it. If you do a drawing and it's just too light and you can hardly see it, well, that's the beginning of learning about tone and tonal variety, so you've just got to get yourself started and then come on a course, do a workshop with Etcher, learn skills, learn techniques, build it up slowly, step by step by step, and then it kind of opens up a whole new world of looking for you. We've called these workshops that we put together a journey of looking, and it's all about just looking at the world and thinking about things and solving little problems about how you fit things on a page, how you build up layers, how you build up tone, how you capture detail, how you tell stories. So it's all about looking and learning, and the two just go hand in hand. And as I said before, with my journey, it takes you out of the studio. It encourages you to go outside, and you can go with friends, you can go and have a coffee, you can go and get a drink afterwards, and you're living and breathing in the same space in which you're drawing, and it's good for you. It's good for it's good for you. It's good for your creative soul. Sorry, that probably doesn't answer Paul Louise's question at all. Oh, I think it did.
I feel like
it did.
No, I feel like it does. Yeah, it does. If the fact that you've mentioned going out with friends and, making it a good environment for you to actually get started, it makes it, for one, personal, like you've mentioned earlier. Because I've seen some questions in the chat, how they took a lot of pictures to paint, and then they don't paint it because they feel like there's this sort of disconnect, and there's this like challenge of not being able to, be good at conquering, I guess, that piece. So I'm glad that you've pointed out having that personal connection to that, scene would be a great first step for you to actually get you going and your confidence. Yeah.
Kathleen, Teresa's just said, I can't draw. Okay. Everybody can draw. Everyone can draw, right? You can draw, but you might not draw in the way in which you want to draw. Okay. So if you say you can't draw, you can. Everybody can draw. But if you want to improve, you've got to do more of it. It's as simple as that. If you want to get better, you just got to practice and improve. But I think before that, you've got to kind of want to do it. You've got to kind of feel, I'm going to get something out of this. There's going to be a benefit here for me. And you've almost like got to see the benefits of doing it. So one of the benefits is it enables you to be curious about the world. You go out and you find out about stuff. So when I did all these Chester workshops last year with you guys, with Etcher, it enabled me to really think about the city and to think about, how the city's made up of old buildings and why those buildings were put there. Some of them are churches, some of them are archways, some of the clocks on towers. And, you look at the fabric of the wall and the sandstone bricks and all the cracks in between, and then the railings and the shops. So you're just out there and you're thinking about the space that you're in, and that's got nothing to do with the art. The art comes kind of second in a way, because then you're learning about how you can capture that, how you can record that and put it on a piece of paper. And that's when all the kind of skills come in as well. So I think you've got to have a reason to want to go and do it. And I just know, because I've done this all my life and I have taught thousands of students all over the world. I think it gives you so many positives, and we need positives at the moment. We do. We really need lots and lots of positives. And the other thing as well that it's worth mentioning, to Teresa, if you start drawing, you're just marking your own little space. You know, you're marking something for yourself. Whatever you draw, whether it's good, bad, ugly, indifferent, whatever, it's yours, and nobody can take that away from you. You know, and someone might come along and criticize it and say it's rubbish. Well, you just don't talk to them again. It's easy. You just like get rid of them. Okay, you just don't talk to them again. You don't need that negativity in your life. But most people will never do that. Everybody will just really encourage you and be supportive, because that's what it's about. It's not about being amazing. It's not about being really, really good. It's just about having a go and enjoying it and making your mark on a piece of paper. It's dead simple.
Thank you so much. I love that answer. I'm glad that you've also or addressed rather that concern. Yeah, so I guess we can now move forward to how, or the action of how to actually capture the scene that we're looking at. So you've mentioned earlier that it's really just capturing or evoking the emotion of the scene that we've captured. We've heard this a couple of times, but how do we actually get started? So Marianne here has a wonderful question. She says she has the opposite problem. She couldn't find the paint if I'm not outside. It's more of a 3D, and the colors are much better when you're looking at the real thing. So I guess the question is, how do you see art in all the tiny details? Like, how do you translate it into like a line, a shape?
Yeah.
So how does Ian Fennelly do that?
Great question. Yeah. And, you know, before I answer that, Kathleen, I completely agree with Marianne. I see so much more outside as well, you know, because I think when you're outside, you're more kind of in control of the scene. You know, I think a photograph kind of bosses you around, because a photograph, everything's kind of flat and everything's got the same intensity, you know. So there might be something really boring in the corner and it's screaming at you to draw me. But when you're actually in the same space that you're recording, you know, you're much more selective, and you're seeing with memory, you're seeing with experience, you're seeing with, you know, with emotion. And so you're much more kind of able to manipulate the scene. So I completely agree with what Marianne said. So just remind me, what was the question? How do I go about doing what I do? Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So when I rock up on a scene, when I'm confronted with a view, the first thing I do is I think about composition. So in other words, how do I fit that scene onto the piece of paper in its simplest form? And it might just be, say, 3 or 4 lines, you know, a few angles, maybe a roof line, maybe the edge of a building, maybe where the pavement meets the lower elevation of the building. And it's all about how those lines, those simple shapes, fit within that piece of paper. And it's just composition, really simple. And then the next stage, the next level of looking, is to fill those shapes and those lines in with a bit more information. And it's still outline, but it's kind of smaller outline. So the first few lines act as like a kind of safety net, like a structure on the page. And then the next layer of kind of looking and line work is kind of fitting things around that, adding more information. And that's all to do with composition. And then the next stage is colour. And you'll see all of this in the workshops. The next stage is colour. So with colour, I kind of use a very limited palette. And the colours kind of look a bit like the real thing, but they look more like my real thing. You know, I'm using colour in a kind of figurative way, but also in an emotional way as well. But I use a very limited palette, so I use lots of complementary colours. And then the next layer, the next stage, is to add tonal value to that. So I use the brush pen, the Tombow brush pen. And then the final stage, the big stage, is the detail, where we kind of start telling the story. And that's when all the little tricks and tips come in, you know, when you're using hatching techniques and little pops of black negative space and patterns and stylizations and thickening up lines and adding extra little elements to it. So that's kind of like a journey of looking, which we've put together for you in these workshops. And it takes, I mean, the recorded ones take nearly 2 hours, I guess, but the on location ones take the whole day. You know, it's like 6-7 hours. It takes a long time because we go and we have a coffee break and we have a lunch break, and then we go drinking afterwards and stuff, and then we go to the nightclub in the evening and go partying until 2 a.m. Then we do it all over again. It's great.
That's lovely. That sounds lovely. And Ian was telling me earlier how he just got back from a trip as well to teach. So it really sounds lovely. Now I'm getting jealous. Let's see. Okay, so Ian has outlined for us the why the title is Journey of Looking. And so now that we have that outlined, I guess we can now delve deeper into the details of detailed questions here in the chat. Starting with the ones I've skipped earlier. James Coleman, who asked this question very early in the chat while we were just doing the intro. He just dumped this question. Do you use waterproof and pens in watercolor? Do you use any colored highlighters? I guess this is just an overview of your materials.
Okay, so I use a combination of materials, James. So I use, at the beginning, in the first couple of steps that I've just described, the first stage, I use a Tombow brush pen, which is water soluble. But I use the fine liner part of that, and it behaves in a very similar way to a soft leaded pencil, except you can't rub it out. And the reason I use a permanent pen at the beginning rather than a pencil is because I think it makes you try a little bit harder. You think harder. Sometimes in some workshops, I do use pencils. But mostly on occasion, and a lot of the workshops that I've done with Etcher, we use a Tombow brush pen, the fine liner parts as well, because you're more committed with a permanent pen. And then the next stage, I use a permanent line maker. So these are the black, like a 0.3 line maker that you can get. There's all sorts of different brands. I think you guys make them, don't you, Etcher? You make you manufacture line makers, don't you? Sure you do. I'm sure you've sent me some. Yeah, I use them. I've used them. There's loads on the market, but if you're going to buy some, buy Etchers because they're wonderful. So that's the second stage. Then the next stage is paints. I use watercolor paints. I use Winsor & Newton paints, and that's kind of sandwiched in the middle of the process. And then the next stage, I use the Tombow brush pens again, and then the detail stage, I use permanent line makers. So the main three materials I use are watercolor paints, permanent line makers, and brush pens, Tombow brush pens. And that's the combination I've kind of always used ever since I've been doing it, really, because they are drawings. They're essentially urban sketch drawings, but the colour's a big part of it as well.
Thank you so much. And in relation to materials, I guess, or sometimes we get too engrossed with the details that's like directly in front of us, and we just take advantage of the materials that we have. And we enjoy it too much, and sometimes we just get caught up that it's already too late for us to finish the piece. So for someone who's too slow and actually can't finish, like, I guess, on time, do you have like any practical tips to move faster, especially earlier stages?
Not so much you move faster, but just drawing a smaller piece of paper. Just don't have as much space on the page, so you don't have to put as much stuff in. So if there's a student that's really, really slow, I kind of encourage them not to fill the whole of the page. So draw small, keep your drawing small, even though it's maybe an A3 large sheet of paper, keep everything quite compressed, so your buildings are not as big, so you don't have to put as many bricks in, or you haven't got as much space at the bottom, you don't have to put as much pavement or cobbles in, or your tree's going to be shrunken down, so you don't have to put as many leaves in. But so you're still doing everything. You're still doing the composition, you're still structuring it on the page, you're still using the color, you're still using the tone, you're still capturing the detail, but everything's just smaller and it's easier. That's how I would encourage it. Just work small, and it kind of works. I mean, people can still work on a big piece of paper, but if they keep their drawing really, really small, then if you have time at the end, you can expand the picture and it just looks so cool. It looks, you're in control then, So for example, if you've got a piece of paper and you're going to draw, say, a building, you can actually make it just kind of that size. Can you see that? Is that coming up on the screen? You can make it actually
a little closer, probably.
Okay, let me make it darker for you. Here we go. I wasn't planning on doing this, guys. Otherwise, I would have got better. Okay, can you see that?
There we go. Yep.
Okay, so you can see how big that is in relation to the page. It's actually quite small, okay? But that just then gives you the opportunity to expand the picture later on. So for example, later on you might notice there's like a little cone somewhere. See? So you put the cone over there, right? Can
Yeah.
you see that? It's the cone, right? So you're in control of the picture. Now the opposite of that would be to draw really, really big, make it really massive like that. Then you can't put the cone in, you see? So by doing things small, you're in control. You can control the content, especially if you're drawing outside, because you can scan the scene, you can look from side to side, and you think, oh, there's a fire hydrant over there. That looks really cool. Or someone's parked a bike over on that lamppost. I'll bring it into my picture, and you've got the space to do it. So you're controlling the scene all the time, and that's why the composition is so important, because you're getting the scale of everything just right at the beginning. Okay.
That's a really useful tip right there. We do hope we answered that question right here, but I think it's also related to some of the questions regarding details. Someone mentioned how they get too lost in the details and how they can't draw straight and accurate lines. Do you think that if they work small, the next struggle rather for some might be they might to make everything seem a little perfect? Do you have like other tips or suggestions for that, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think about lines is if you draw carefully and you draw slowly, you can probably get your lines straight. But sometimes you don't want your lines to be straight. You know, if you draw like an old building, an old crooked building, or you know, a roof line that's kind of like seen better days. You know, sometimes
Yeah.
a straight line can just be very technical, and sometimes a crooked line can have so much more character and personality. So I think you need to embrace your lines and not stress about them too much. And you see the benefit of the process that I use, where I go through these steps with composition and we build it up slowly. If your first line that you draw isn't quite where you want it to be, you can then adjust it in the next stage. So because in step one, I'm using the Tombow brush pen, the fine liner parts, and the kind of grey pens as well. They're not very dark. If it wobbles a little bit or it's not quite in the right place, when you refine it again in the next stage with the permanent line maker, you can adjust it so it can grow up, or it can grow down, or it can wobble, or you can straighten it. You know, you're constantly adjusting things because that links in with your experience of looking, and the more you look, the more you understand. So at the beginning, you're kind of trying to work out everything out, and you're not quite sure where things go. So you're putting little markers down, and then those little markers help you with the next stage of looking, where you can refine things a little bit more and you can adjust things. So it's all about slowly building it up. And to begin with, your lines might not be quite where you want them to be, but then you've got time, you know, to fix them and adjust them.
That's very reassuring. Thank you so much. And I think it also is in consonance with what's in the chat, or what others are saying in the chat. We are our worst critics.
I think straight lines are overrated, Kathleen. Seriously. Straight lines are
Absolutely.
overrated. They really are.
Yeah, make life fun, make life wonky. Somebody said, I like that. Wonky lines. Make life more interesting rather. Okay. Really interesting question from Liz. Would love to know, how do you work with light transitions changes during the day? Thank you so much for your interview. Yeah.
Okay, that's a great question. Well, I think she's probably referring to shadows. Is that right? I guess as the light changes, the shadows move. I think what I don't. I mean, if you look at any of my work, you'll notice that the shadows are not specific shadows. So unlike, say, Impressionism, the Impressionists, you know, Monet and especially Pissarro, were chasing shadows all over the place. You know, they were capturing the light for a very specific condition. I don't do that, and the reason I don't do it is my sketches are a record of me looking at something over quite a long period of time, especially if it's a workshop. So my workshop will start at 9 in the morning and it finishes at, say, 5 o'clock, and we have a few breaks in between. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of drawing the stuff that's in front of me, but the shadows and the light as it changes, I kind of don't really worry about because they're moving constantly. So if you've got a lamppost that cuts right down the centre and it casts a shadow across the pavement or the road, I probably won't put that shadow in because it'll move, it constantly moves. And if you've got like two buildings next to each other and one of them casts a shadow across the facade of the other building, I won't put that shadow in because it looks ambiguous. It just doesn't look right for me. So I don't put them in. And it's partly because I'm not even looking at them. But I do use shadows for other reasons. So I use shadows for things like weight. So if you've got, say, a bicycle, there might be like a little indication of a shadow where the wheel hits the ground to give it, but that's giving it weight and depth and solidity. And also I'll use shadows perhaps in passageways and alleyways, but then that's creating mystery and it's creating depth. It's not specific light sources because I'm not interested in that, partly because the light's moving all the time. And it's the same with figures. It's why I don't really put figures in as well, because they kind of move all over the place, they don't keep still. So that's why I don't kind of go chasing light around, but I do use shadows for other reasons, for mystery, for depth, and especially for weight as well. Yeah, if I draw something like, I mentioned a fire hydrant before. If I do a fire hydrant, because I always go to America and do fire hydrants because I love them, they're so fun. I'll often do like a little black indication of something down at the bottom where it hits the ground, and it gives it that sense of weight, which it kind of needs really. Otherwise, it's kind of floating around a bit.
Thank you so much.
Great question.
Yeah. And Marianne, I think, has an additional question on top of that. How about finishing with shadows, like when everything is almost finished?
Well, probably by then all the shadows have gone. I mean, yeah. The thing is, Marianne, every picture is different. Every set of conditions is different. The lighting is different. I mean, sometimes you haven't got shadows, I mean, I live in England and we're lucky if we get a shadow, don't get an awful lot. But like when I go to America quite a bit, and sometimes I'm sketching in, really strong lighting conditions. And if there is a specific shadow cast across a building or cast across the floor and it's going to work in the composition, I'll put it in, but I won't put it in for the sake of it. I'll only do it if it works within the composition. Because sometimes you can imagine if you've got a lamppost, and imagine the lamppost is kind of over on the right-hand side of the picture and the sun is over on the left. The shadow cast on the floor is going to then go right into the bottom right-hand corner. And that's going to really affect the composition. It's going to affect the balance of the picture. So shadows that are cast on the floor, you have to be careful with, because sometimes they can completely change the overall framing of the picture. And then shadows that are cast up against another building, I feel you have to be careful with, because they can look ambiguous. It's kind of hard to tell what's going on unless you are super, super careful and really realistic, trying to make it look like a photograph, which I kind of do sometimes, but not really. So I think you just have to be careful with them. And it's not something I'm often looking at specifically.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for clarifying that. Okay, before we move forward to, I guess, colors, we have one question from Paranoids. I like that witty name. Art Room. Do you plan the sketch, I guess when you begin, do you plan a sketch with pencil marks, or do you just go with one point and work with another? Or is this something that you delve deeper in the course? But yeah, just a general overview, I guess.
Okay, so how I plan a sketch, right? So if I'm sketching, I very rarely sketch by myself now, because nearly all the time I'm filming. I've got a film crew with me, or I'm teaching. So I very rarely go out and do my own kind of thing. So the last sketch that I did was in France. I was in the Dordogne region of France, and I did about six workshops. And one of the workshops I did was just a demonstration. And it's the last picture I put on my Instagram account. And it's really kind of like a complex scene. It's a little narrow passageway with alleyways going up in different directions. So I'll just talk about how I plan that particular one. So the first thing is you've got to look at it and you've got to think about it. And you've got to think, why do I want to do it? What is it about this scene? You know, why am I going to spend the next 2 hours drawing this? And it's got to kind of, if you like, speak to you, communicate with you in some way. And I just loved all the different angles, the different elevations, the stonework, the light, everything was just gorgeous. I particularly loved the different kind of elevations, the path going down, the path going up. It was just wonderful. So the first bit of planning is thinking and looking. And then I kind of visualize in my head where things are going to go, you know, perhaps like what the focal point will be, what the parameters are. The parameters are important. So the parameters are where you kind of chop things on this side and where you chop things on that side. So beyond that, you're not going to do anything, you know. So how wide is your vision, and also how high is your vision? So you're kind of visualizing all of that. And then the first thing I'll do for the students is I get some pens and I just place them. On the page. I do this pen placement thing. Okay, so I'll do perhaps the roof line, I'll do the side of a building, I'll do the bottom, I'll do maybe an angle if there's some perspective. So we'll do this pen placement activity. Then I take the pens off and I'll just very lightly sketch it out, as I said before, with the Tombow brush pen, using the fine liner parts, and it behaves in a very similar way to a soft leaded pencil. So that's all planning stage. Now in a workshop, all the things I've just described will take maybe about 30 minutes. It's quite long, and everyone's kind of watching and asking questions and taking photographs as well. So it's kind of quite a long, drawn out process. And then the students get started and I come around and help them. And that's how we kick the workshops off. But there's a lot of talking at the beginning, you know, explaining why I've chosen this scene and how it communicates to me and how I'm inspired by it, and, you know, why it's sexy and all that kind of stuff.
Lovely. Thank you so much. And like we've mentioned earlier, all of those will be delved deeper, I guess. Ian delves deeper into that in his course, which I've dropped in the link. The link I have dropped in the chat. Okay. And moving forward to now colors. So really exciting, where we now have our sketch. So now let's envision putting colors into this. So before I entertain the questions about watercolors or colors in general, what's the first thing you keep in mind when starting with your watercolors, Ian?
Okay. Great question. So color is obviously sandwiched in between the process. So we do 2 steps of drawing, then color, then 2 more steps of drawing. And the reason the color goes on quite early, because a lot of urban sketches color at the end, right? And I think if you color at the end, you're kind of filling in all the shapes. So what I try and do is I put the color on kind of halfway through when the drawing isn't complete, because I think it frees up the painting process. You're not just painting shapes, you're actually painting space, and you're letting the paint flow more across the page. So when I'm choosing the colors, and every workshop I do, I use a different combination of colors. So when I'm choosing the colors, I try and limit myself to say 4, maybe sometimes 3, maybe sometimes 5, but kind of 4 is the ideal. And I'll try and pick at least 1 set of complementary colors. Okay, so if anybody doesn't know what a complementary color is, they're the 2 colors that are kind of opposite sides of the color wheel. Okay, and I've got lots of kind of favorite complementary color combinations. So I'll try and use a pair of complementary colors and then maybe 2 other colors, and try and have maybe 2 cold colors and 2 warm colors. What I try and do is when I'm starting out is I'll look for what's called a local color. So a local color is a color that you can actually see for real. And it could be the brickwork on a building, which is a kind of going to be like a browny grey, whatever it might be. So I might just match that a little bit. I'll start applying the colour and I'll just match that up. And then what then happens is something magical goes off, because once you put that first colour on, and let's imagine it's a burnt sienna because it's matching a little bit of the facade of the building. For me personally, that burnt sienna suddenly takes on a life of its own. And it's almost like it's come out to play on the page, you know, it's playing around. And then you think, okay, what can I use? What other colour can I use now to help it play even nicer? So I think, okay, let's try a cerulean blue or an ultramarine blue. And then the two of them start combining together, and it's all mixed on the page. It's not mixed separately in the palette because that's really boring. I mix them on the page because by mixing them on the page, you get much more variety of colour and tone as well. And the big thing that I teach, the most important thing, is not the actual colours themselves, it's the use of water, because it's the water that makes the difference. So I always say the colours come out to play on the page, but the water helps them to play nicely. And it's all about the application of the water and how the water pushes it around. You know, the water enables it to have a variety of hue, a variety of tone, different effects, different types of brushes, how you hold the brush, the angle by which it hits the paper. So it's really about the water and pushing it around. Somebody mentioned before, I think in the chat, about muddy, or maybe you mentioned it to me about muddy
Yes.
colours. Because a lot of people find their paintings get a little bit muddy. And I think, I mean, obviously I don't know the reason why. I'd have to see what they were doing. But sometimes it's because you're using too many colours. And, you know, if you can kind of limit yourself to maybe 4 or 5 and try and mix them and push them around and really watch the water, be careful with the water and don't push them around too quickly, you know, do it quite slowly. And you'll see all of this in the videos, in the workshops we put together. When I'm painting, it looks quick, but it's actually quite slow and careful as I'm pushing things around. And then the other thing is probably if it's getting muddy, maybe you're just doing too much. You know, you need to stop. I always say the minute you think you've done enough painting, just stop. Don't do anymore. Stop. Walk away. Leave it. It's best to do much less paint work than you think you need, because you can always add to it later on when you've kind of finished all the kind of detail. Yeah, I think people tend to kind of overpaint the watercolor stage, and it's easy to do that because it's such fun to do. I mean, no one wants to put their paintbrush down. Remember the kids at school, yeah, the little 6-year-old kids I used to work with, and you say, right, kids, come on, time to put the brushes down now. They'd all start crying their eyes out, and the students are the same. You know, all my students in the Dordogne last week, I mean, they're all like in their 60s and 70s, and some of them were like, you know, managing directors of companies and professors and doctors and stuff. I said, right, sorry guys, time to stop painting now. And I had all sorts of tears, they were crying the bloody eyes out. You know, it's like own their own company. Whinging.
That's so funny, but I have to agree, it's true. We definitely, that's something that is relatable to almost everyone, I believe. But yeah, I'm glad that you've pointed that out. Let's see. Someone in the chat mentioned, Joey mentioned, to use creative or less realistic color. Do we need to pay close attention to the value?
That's a great point, Joey. Joey, that you've nailed it. Absolutely. Yeah, that is brilliant. So if you're going to use creative color, which I do, the value has to be so right. And if Joey, if you're on social media, if you're on Instagram, have a look at the latest picture I've just posted. In fact, look at any of my pictures, but especially the latest one, because the colors are not quite as realistic as a photograph. I mean, they're not all over the place, obviously, but the value of them is pretty close. And I get the value right because I pay so much attention to the water. So what would happen, for example, is if I put in the latest picture in my Instagram, the two passageways either side, one's high and one's low. I think it's Windsor Blue I've used Windsor Blue, and this links back nicely with the question on shadows before. So there's shadows in there, but the shadows are to create depth and mystery. So the Windsor Blue goes on, and I use loads of pigments. You know, it's really quite thick, but then the water is pushing it around and merging it in with the other colours. I think it's like raw umber or raw sienna or something, and that's how you get the value, by just constantly pushing things around rather than trying to mix on the tray and sticking it on the paper, and it doesn't look anything like what you want it to be. So I tend to put more pigment on to begin with and then push it around with the water and then add more and adjust it as we go along. So Joey's absolutely right. Yeah.
Love that, how you mentioned push the colors. So do you tend to mix on the paper and not on the palette? Yep.
So that's a great question, Kathleen. Nearly all the mixing, I'd say 90% of the mixing is on the paper, right? But what I will do, if I'm using, say, two complementary colours, and I mentioned burnt sienna and ultramarine, but another great combination is transparent orange and cerulean blue, or transparent orange and manganese blue. They're wonderful. And even another really good one is Windsor violet and Indian yellow, but they're not 100% complementary, but they still work. But if you take those two, Windsor violet and Indian yellow, what I will do is I'll mix those. I'll always put the violet on first, and then add the yellow, and it gives you this wonderful kind of browny gold color. Okay, because they're kind of cancelling each other out. So I'll use that. I'll push them around, and there's loads of examples on my Instagram accounts where I've used those. So I'll push those around with the water and the brushes. But then towards the end, I'll mix the two colours together on the tray, the Windsor violet and the Indian yellow. And then when you add white to them, the white just drops them right down. It really neutralises them. And then you can then use that colour, that mix of the two with the whites alongside the pure colour with water. And they just complement. I mean, that's the whole point of them being complementary colours, because they just work so well. You've got this wonderful combo of the two colours and the white, which looks quite kind of grey, but it sits beautifully alongside the pure colour of the violet and the yellow. And that's how you avoid getting horrible, muddy, dirty colours, just by thinking about the complementaries on opposite sides of the wheel and just mixing them around with water. And then when you want to add some white, add some white. And it works so well. And you know, it's so much fun to do. It's got to be fun. It's all about fun. You know, it's got to be enjoyable. You've got to love doing this, otherwise you're not going to want to do it.
Love that. It's also all in the mind, and how you perceive it. Which brings me to one concerned viewer, I guess, from the stream, Aditya. Ian's work, he mentioned, has his characteristic strong distortions and yet maintains perspective. I'm never able to figure out how you achieve that. So do you have any, tips on how do we get into your mind, I guess, or any encouraging words?
Yeah, that's a really hard one to answer in a chat like this, because I think obviously the best way of answering that is to come on a workshop, or let me demonstrate it for you, because you kind of have to have, really, Kathleen, the scene in front of you. So you need to know what I'm looking at, and I'm looking at the same thing as you. So Adita's sitting next to me, right, and we're both on location, and we're looking at this scene in front of us. So you've got to ask yourself, what's the most important thing? Is it the building that we're looking at? And let's imagine we're looking at, a town hall, a big grand building with loads and loads of windows and stairs going up, and a tree in front. What's the most important thing? Is it the building, or is it the piece of art that I'm going to make? And it's always 100% always going to be the piece of art that you're going to make, because the building is just the reason for doing it. It's kind of like it's your inspiration, it's your starting point. Unless you're an architect, the building isn't that important. It's just something that you can use to have fun with paints and pen and paper, and then you take that away with you. It's what you take away. And when it comes to the distortion and the twisting and the bending, it's about you controlling that thing in front of you. Because you're not copying a photograph. You're going to manipulate that building. So, for example, it might have 5 floors, and you don't do 5 floors, you do 4 floors. Because if you do 4 floors, you've got less to do. And it might have 6 windows going across, but you don't do 6, you do 4. Because by doing 4, you can make them bigger. And if you make them bigger, you can make them more fun, you can make them funkier. All the windows might be the same, but you don't do them all the same. You play around with them a little bit, you make some, you give them different patterns inside, or you give some of them, balconies or mantelpieces, or you grab windows from other buildings and you put them in. So you're not completely changing it, but what you're doing is you're playing around and you're getting things from other areas. And when it comes to the distortions, it's not making it cartoony, although it's kind of flirting with the idea of cartoons. but you're just not going for these perfectly verticals. You're bending them out ever so slightly because that gives it drama, that gives it personality. And a lot of the buildings get compressed. You squeeze them in so you can fit more things around to give it a context. So all these things, you're just manipulating the scene all the time to tell your own story. It's storytelling, and you know, stories are exaggerated. I mean, I've just finished writing my third book, and it's all about sketching stories. And all the stories start off with a bit of truth, but then I kind of bend it and invent people and change names and exaggerate them to make it funny. And it's the same with the drawings. You know, it starts off with reality, or it starts off with truth, and then you twist it a little bit. You know, it's not telling lies. It's just making it more fun. And that's what we do as artists. You know, we shape things and we bend things so our own voice comes through. I think that's what I do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's see. And that's absolutely true. I think that's where we shine, like you've mentioned, as artists. Yeah, and we do hope that you find your the strength, I guess, Aditya, to really try this out yourself and just like Ian mentioned earlier, baby steps. um,
Yeah.
let's see. Okay, still in the topic of water and color. Theresa is asking, when painting outdoors, how do you control how wet your paper is?
Okay, that's a great question, Teresa. So it is a bit of an issue when you're outside. If it's cold, it's going to take a long time for the paints to dry. What I never do is I never wet the paper beforehand. I don't know whether that's what Teresa's alluding to, maybe not, but some artists wet the paper before. I never do that because I think it's hard enough as it is, and I don't really see the point in doing it. But I do use a lot of water, as I said before, so the paint does get very, very, very wet. And then it's kind of an ideal time to maybe have a break, you know, go and have a coffee or have lunch or something. And it kind of takes about 10, 15, 20 minutes to dry. Sometimes what I've done when I've been sketching in Liverpool, which is my nearest city, and it's been really cold, I put the paint on and it's like soaking wet, and I've just really wanted to carry on. You know, I've been desperate to carry on. So I've gone to like the gents' toilets and they've got, you know, the hand dryers. So I've stuck it under a hand dryer. But of course, what happens, all the pressure comes out and it starts blowing all the paint off the edge of the paper. So it's all dripping down. So I've done that a few times. So that's like not a good idea to do that. But yeah, you just have to be patient. Just, you know, let it dry naturally. I mean, the thing about my process, which does help, is the next stage after the painting stage is the Tombow brush pen. It's the tone stage, and because they're water soluble, you can actually draw on top of the paint even if it's still a little bit damp. I mean, if it's soaking wet, you can't, because it just won't work. It won't wreck the brushes, but it's not a great thing to do. But even if the paint's a little bit damp, you can still start drawing on it. And because they're water soluble pens, they kind of push or almost like lift the paint off a little bit, and you can push it around, you know. So if you get things like cauliflowers, I hope you all know what a cauliflower is. It's when two kind of areas of paint come together, and it gives this kind of like thing, this like what looks like a cauliflower. That's why they call it a cauliflower. If you get a cauliflower and you want to get rid of it, if you use the lightest grey brush pen, Tombow, which is the 95 or the 89, it's really sad that I know those numbers. I wish I didn't. I wish I could unlearn that. But anyway, if you've got the 95 or the 89 and you go over it, the cauliflower disappears. It's amazing. It's magic. You can get rid of cauliflower.
Oh, wow.
It's wonderful.
That's lovely.
That's a top tip.
I'm gonna put that, top tip for today.
Getting rid of
Yeah.
cauliflower.
All right, let's see. And I guess just to wrap up that water and color section part of the Q&A, do you have a preference when it comes to paints? Is it like tube paints or pans, or it doesn't really matter?
I always use pans, and I kind of use Winsor & Newton. I mean, I've used lots of other paints as well, but I kind of stick to Winsor & Newton. But there's no difference between all the brands are professional quality, and they're all great. I just kind of know how the Winsor & Newton colours work. But obviously, just use whatever colours you want. But I kind of stick to pans. Apart from the white, I use titanium white, and I tend to use that in a tube. I mean, I've got a pan, but I kind of don't really use it. So I use that as a tube, and I kind of squeeze that onto the tray. So when I'm mixing the complementaries together and I want to add the white to kind of drop it down to neutralize it, it's there ready for me. And also sometimes I'll put pure white on as well. Maybe I'll put like a layer on top of something to maybe try and make it a bit more opaque, just to make it look more solid. So I can tend to use the tubey whites, yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. And I guess that's it for the process itself, but this is on the business side of art. I guess this is not how to get started, but more on how to move forward, or moving forward phase. Liz is asking a pretty much a current, or yeah, question that's pretty much part of the current trend. From the business side of art, do you have any thoughts on how best to protect your work from AI piracy, or any thoughts into that?
I've no idea. I mean, you're probably not asking the right person. I mean, there is AI piracy and there's nothing we can do about it. It's just one of those things, you know. Hopefully all the good people will shine through in the end and people will see it for what it is.
Love
I mean,
that.
it's not affected me personally, and I can see it's a growing concern, you know, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But there's nothing we can do about it. You know, we have these wonderful social media tools. I mean, some of them are not as good as they used to be a few years ago, but we do have the option to put our work out there and we can share it. And it's just something we've got to live with, really. It is sad. It really is sad that it's going that way. I mean, I've not personally encountered it myself, but you know, I'm sure it's going to be a kind of growing concern for a lot of people. Yeah. Somebody just asked, Francine's World just asked about the white. Doesn't the white dull the colour? And yeah, it does. That's exactly why I do it. that's the reason why, you know. So it will dull it. It'll make it more kind of opaque, and that's why I'm putting it on. Yeah, but you don't put it all over. All these techniques, you don't put it everywhere. You just put it in certain places. So, for example, if you've got like a stone wall and you want to make some parts less shiny than others, pop some white in certain parts of it, but don't do it all over, because if you do it all over, it's kind of like there's not really much point, you know. So do everything in small bits and then just step back and think about it. And yeah.
Love that, because sometimes we get too excited with like a new technique. I think we can entertain one last question from Marianne. 6 best colors that you choose when you're painting outside, I guess.
Okay, six colors, right? I would go for cerulean blue, and ultramarine blue, probably those two. I mean, I'd love to use Prussian blue as well, but you can't. If you only got 6, you can't really have 3 blues. So cerulean blue and ultramarine blue, and burnt sienna, and I'd probably use a transparent orange. So there's 4. They're probably my 4 favorite colors. And then if you want to throw in 2 extras for variety, you could probably go for like an alizarin crimson and a yellow. An Indian yellow would do, or maybe instead of alizarin crimson, a Windsor violet, because then you've got the violet, which is just going to give you so much great variety, and you can mix the violet and the ultramarine together to get the most amazing dark, intense tone. Yeah, so that would work. Yeah, cerulean, ultramarine, burnt sienna, transparent orange, probably Windsor violet, and a type of yellow would be great. Just those 6, and you can get such a lot. You've got 2 great pairs of complementaries in there as well. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. And Elizabeth has a funny quote she shared. I read a quote this week, something along the lines of, "I wish they'd focus on AI that helps with the laundry and cleaning to leave me time to make more art." That makes sense. We do wish we're going to be moving in that direction, hopefully to help us with the laundry. So let's see. That concludes, I guess, the Q&A for Ian's how to get started with urban sketching. So we do wish that all of these tips that we have discussed today will help you get started. And I've dropped the link again to Ian's The Journey of Looking course on our website. And mind you, this is not the only course that Ian has. He has a lot of classes with us. He has over 10, 11 classes with Etcher already and more from his own website. So we are always grateful for Ian sharing his wonderful skills and talents and enthusiasm with us. So let's see. Thanks, lovely chat. Thanks for all the answers. Awesome. Okay, and don't forget again, we have a giveaway at the end. So make sure you still, for you to be qualified, the only thing you need to do is to just be active here in the chat. And yeah, we'll be asking a question and really interesting. So I am going to be dropping first the link again to the course by Ian Fennelly. That's again at 40% off, up and for a limited time offer only up until the 26th of June. So if you grab that before 26th of June, you get that for 40% off. That's, I think it's $72 from now. So I think that's a steal for I think it's a 4-part course if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Four workshops, and I think each one is about an hour and 30 minutes of footage in each one. So yeah, it's a lot of content there, and they're all broken down into all the steps that I've just been describing as well, Kathleen. Yeah,
exactly. Yep. And we do hope you do check that out. And I think that pretty much wraps up everything. Thanks so much, Ian. I did a couple of your workshops during COVID and learned so much. I will try to attend one of your workshops in the south of France. Yay, says Marianne.
Oh, that's great, Marianne. Thank you.
Only thing we've missed are Ian's lovely dogs. I did find try to find out. Let's see. Love your layers old looking book. Oh, okay. Let's see.
My first book. Yeah, I brought 2 more out since. Well, one's not quite come out yet. It's called Sketching Stories. That'll be out hopefully in about 2 months' time. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate Ian's distinctive style and enjoyed hearing him talk about his process. Thank you so much. Piper Swan Camera. Awesome. Okay. All right. So moving forward to our giveaway. I know you guys are excited. So we have prepared a little bit of a mechanics right here so that we can all get organized with how to go about the giveaway. So the giveaway is, or prize rather, would be your choice of Etcher Lab watercolor block. So these are some of the watercolor blocks we have. Let me just put that on full screen for a while. There we go. So this is in different sizes in A4, and then we also have those in square. So whichever watercolor block you choose, we have different types of paper. So be it the wood pulp one, the 50% cotton one, and yeah, we have different sizes as well. So it's your choice. We're going to be choosing just one winner for this giveaway. All you need to do is just be active in the chat and listen to the mechanics. So for the mechanics, Ian will be asking a question, and then the first person who gets the answer correct in the chat, when I type the word go in the chat, the first person who gets the answer correct, that's the first person, the winner. And then when I type the word stop after 15 seconds, all the answers after that will be disqualified, not unless we don't find a winner within that go and stop message in the chat. So all you need to do is
Kathleen, people only answer once, can't they? Yeah, they can only type once. Right. Okay. Right.
So you
Shall I
get
ask
one
the question now then?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so everybody, the question is, I've been teaching workshops, sketching workshops now for quite a long time. Even though I look really young, I've been doing it for quite a few years. So the question is, how many different countries have I taught in? How many different countries have I taught urban sketching workshops in?
Okay, and I typed the word go already. So how many countries? Different countries have Ian taught workshops in. Okay. let's give them 15 seconds. 15. That's a lot. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and stop. Okay. All right, that's a lot of answers I need to review. Ian, do you want to take over and wrap up this session before I review the answers?
Yeah. So we need to stop now, guys. I'm sorry, but one nobody's got exactly the right answer, but one person
Oh.
is only out by one. So Kathleen, is it okay if I announce the winner? They're only out by one. So
Can you help me spot that person, please?
yeah, so I'm just double checking. Nobody's got exactly the right answer, but someone is so close. So okay,
Okay, yeah.
I've had the privilege to teach in 21 different countries, and
Wow.
Liz Strange Savage put 22. Wow, that's
Awesome.
amazing. Liz, you must have been following me for about 7 years. The answer's 21, and Liz got 22, so she is the winner. So congratulations, Liz. Well done.
Congratulations. This really is awesome. And Liz, please feel free to message us at hello@etcherstudio.com. Otherwise, we're going to also message you, but if we have your contact information, unfortunately, but if you're too excited to grab your prize, here is our email, hello@etcherstudio.com. Congratulations again, Liz. And I'm going to hand the floor back to Ian to wrap up this wonderful Q&A with us.
Thank you. Well, can I just thank everybody for joining us, and I hope it's been useful. I mean, we're all on this kind of creative journey together, you know, and what somebody once famously said, we're all just trying to find our way towards the back of the sketchbook, aren't we? And urban sketching is amazing. It really is a magical thing. And I'd just like to finish off with a quote. Is that okay, Kathleen? I've got this like amazing quote. I don't know where I found it, but it's just amazing. And it's just make art to find out what's inside you. So make art to find out what's inside you. And a couple of people have been asking, you know, how to get started. Well, if you get started, you'll find out. You'll find out what you've got. You know, you'll find out what your line is, what your shape is, what your favorite color is, what you like looking at, you know. So it's amazing. It's amazing how much you find out about yourself, and you don't know where it's going to take you.
That is so wonderful. Thank you so much, Ian. And that makes it more art a beautiful thing. It's a form of self-discovery as well. And again, we're going to be dropping the link to Ian's course, The Journey of Looking, here in the chat. And thank you again, everyone, for sticking with us till the end. And thank you, Ian, for spending your time with us today. It's been a pleasure. And with that being said, sorry, go ahead.
You're so welcome, Kathleen. Thank you for being such a lovely host, and thank you for all the kind, positive comments as well. They've been so lovely. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and thank you again, everyone. And until next time, everybody, make more art. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone. Bye.